Hello, everyone. I'm Jess Bazzo of Performative. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar, How Modern Finance Leaders Drive Growth and Value. Before I introduce you to today's featured speakers, we have just a few housekeeping items to cover. For those interested in CPE credit for today, you'll answer 3 polling questions and, of course, remain on the line for the duration of today's webinar. Afterwards, if you are eligible to receive credit, you'll be able to click on an icon to download the certificate located in the certification section. If you have any questions, you can email cpe@performative.com or webcast_feedback@cfo.com. We encourage you to submit any and all questions that come up during today's webinar into the Q&A section of the interface. We've set aside some time to address your questions following today's session. And finally, please do take the short survey at the end of today's webinar. Now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to today's featured speakers. On the line today, I'm excited to be joined by Mark Brousseau, who is president of Brousseau and Associates. Mark has established himself as a thought leader on accounts payable, accounts receivable, payments, and document automation. A popular speaker at industry conferences and on webinars and podcasts, Mark advises prominent end users and solutions and services providers on how to use automation to improve document and payments-driven business processes. Mark has chaired numerous educational conferences and has served on several industry committees and boards. Also on the line today, I'm excited to be joined by Derek Chang, Senior Director of Corporate Marketing with Tipalti. In his role, Derek leads the development of content and is the co-host of the Business Finance Friends podcast. He's authored multiple white papers and articles in the areas of finance operations and is an avid technologist for back office processes, spanning a career of over 25 years. Before we dive in, we, of course, want to go ahead and thank today's webinar sponsor, Tipalti. Their commitment to thought leadership helps us make today's webinar possible and delivered at no cost to the participants. Now it is my distinct pleasure to hand things over to Mark to cover the learning objectives for today's webinar. Welcome, Mark, and over to you.
Hey, thanks so much, Jess, and thank you all for joining us today. So the economic fallout of the pandemic has done more than impact your organization's bottom line. It's also accelerating changes in the way that finance works. Finance leaders can no longer rely on reactive decision-making. When you've got rapidly changing economic conditions and fast-moving business environments, well, now you need real-time access to data. And this is especially true if your business is growth-minded. Here's the good news. With the right technology, finance can play a big role in helping their organization succeed. And during today's webinar, we're going to show you how to do just that. We're going to show you how to modernize your financial operations to drive growth and value. We'll talk about the changing role of finance, how real-time finance data helps businesses become proactive, how to create a growth and value-driven finance function, and we're going to provide you with an action plan for putting all of these strategies into place. But before we do all that, we wanted to start with a poll question, which is now displayed on your screen. We want to know, which of the following is your finance department's top priority for improvement this year? Is it automation? Is it data analysis? Is it becoming more scalable? Or is it driving revenue growth? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. So, Derek, when you talk to finance leaders, what is it that you hear is top of their minds?
I think they lead with automation because it's an enabler for the other areas that we're talking about, data analysis, scalability, revenue growth. It's directly tied to those things, and it does it better than I think if you had manual process involved or human beings trying to track all this stuff. Automation is really kind of the key.
You'd say it's the table stakes for businesses that hope to be prepared for the economic recovery?
Or even beyond the recovery. You know, I think a lot of businesses are still thriving right now, and they're taking advantage of the situation and using that as a growth accelerant. Everything is accelerated this last 12 months, and all the things we put off those are the things we're trying to get accomplished.
I reckon some of the finance leaders on the line today, Derek, would say, is this really the time to be investing in automation? Should we be hoarding cash for working capital? How would you respond to that?
It's a return on investment. Automation usually delivers anywhere from 10 to 100 times what you put in. So it absolutely is the time for the right situation.
What's the weakest link in finance? What's the lowest hanging fruit for automation in finance, in your opinion?
Well, I think in our view, it's still AP, accounts payable, the most antiquated process. I think no one will deny that. And I like to see when someone try. So definitely, if you have other opinions about what you think is a more horrendous part of finance, then please put that in the Q&A. I'd love to know.
How horrendous can we get? We asked our attendees, Derek, which of the following is your finance department's top priority for improvement this year? Actually, I think these results might surprise you. 36% of the attendees on the line said data analysis. 33% of our attendees, Derek, said they want to improve their level of automation. 19% said they want to drive revenue growth, and 10% said scalability is top of mind. Data analysis, that's interesting. What do you think's going on there, Derek?
I think finance people want to deal with data, right? They don't necessarily want to deal with the process. And so I'm not surprised, certainly from this group, I would say, being attuned to how the company is doing and where the finances really lay. I think finance folks love data, and I think that's core to it. The question is, how are they getting that information? Are they exchanging that time that they would be spending on data analysis for, dealing with more transactional activities?
Well, as our poll suggested, the role of finance leaders is changing. The modern finance leader is breaking the traditional boundaries of their finance-based role to help the company at large make better, faster decisions. If you want proof, well, consider the changing role of the CFO. 81% of CFOs see identifying and targeting areas of new value as one of their primary responsibilities. More than 3/4 of CFOs believe it's within their duties to drive business-wide operational transformation. That's what you need all that data for. Today's CFO is expected to go far beyond traditional accounting responsibilities to help drive the company's direction. Today, a CFO might be responsible for improving timely business performance, forecasting, investment decision-making, fundraising, even supporting M&A initiatives. But here's the thing, manual financial operations are holding the CFO as well as the finance teams back by consuming the time and resources necessary to guide the business. Finance leaders recognize this. They know the limitations of manual processes, and that's why more finance teams are using digital tools to automate all those routine tasks. They're trying to free up time for higher value initiatives like data analysis. Once your information is digitized and it's accessible, well, now the finance team can use it to help the organization make more strategic and more informed decisions that could help drive growth and value. But digitization also enables finance departments to grow without having to hire additional staff. And this is going to be a key consideration as we start to ramp up for the recovery. And finally, finance can empower other functions and drive revenue at the enterprise level if they have good visibility into their data. So by taking advantage of technology, finance leaders can take on the responsibilities of paving an efficient and well-informed direction forward for their organization. Now, with all that said, it's not to say that every finance leader has embraced automation. There's really 5 big reasons that some of you are dragging your feet on doing what's necessary to automate your operations. First of all, well, some of you might be worried whether people will ever use new technology. And in my opinion, this is really a change management issue. Just because your finance team has been doing something the same exact way for a long time doesn't mean it's the right way, no matter what they say. It also can be difficult for finance leaders to understand the value for something that they haven't experienced, right? Conceptually, the idea of paying for technology that does what a person can do, well, it might seem unnecessary to some of you who might not have come up through those proverbial ranks. Automation eliminates the need to continually add and vet and train that frontline staff. And that's that ROI that Derek was talking about. Of course, some of you might also be skeptical of some of the technologies that you hear about in the market. And in your defense, some technology providers are certainly making promises that they know they can't keep. Finance leaders can overcome this by taking time to understand whether a system or technology will meet their needs, by checking references and looking at the track record and doing business with partners that have succeeded in their space. Some finance leaders also have an incomplete understanding of exactly what all these technologies do. And the fact is that finance technologies are constantly evolving. But with the right solutions partner, you can be sure that their technology roadmap will roll up the right technologies you need, so you don't have to worry about all the bits and pieces. And finally, some of you might get distracted by your daily routine. We know it's a lot to keep up with everything going on in the world these days. But the fact is that finance leaders can't afford to get distracted because there's big risks if you fail to modernize your finance function. In fact, there's a chance that you might not be able to meet the increased demands that are going to come with the growth and competitive pressures in your markets if you don't automate. And that brings us to our next poll question, which is about to be displayed on your screen. This time we want to know, how would you describe your finance department's current level of automation? Are you fully automated, electronic, touch-free processing? You're living the dream. Are you largely automated and you have got no plans to upgrade your technology? Are you largely automated but you have plans to add more? Are you partially automated with no plans to upgrade your technology? Are you partially automated but you're going to add more technology, or are you a paper pusher? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen. We'll discuss the results in just a moment. So, Derek, when you walk into most finance departments, how would you describe their level of automation?
It's pretty much partial. In our view, level of automation really depends on scope. Some companies think that AP scope for automation kind of ends at the invoice key-in process, but it's much deeper than that for us. We look at supplier management, we look at supplier communications, tax compliance, the whole reconciliation process, whether it's kind of manual reporting or back to the ERP. All of that folds into what we consider the payables cycle. And we want to try and streamline as much of that as possible.
Why are semi-automated finance departments not good enough?
You're looking at handoffs, right? So let's say you can key in an invoice automatically. That's fantastic. But then how do you run it through approvals? How do you make a payment? How do you approve a payment within the organization? These things end up to be, I think, manually executed, or somebody creates custom code for it somewhere within that system, or you ultimately may hire somebody whose whole job is to pay people. So you're paying people to pay people.
How does that hold back business growth?
We're looking at headcount. We're looking at trade-offs within the organization. Do you operationally want to be responsible? That's one. The scalability of the process. Are you suddenly going to rely on human hands to handle the money? At that point, you're looking at errors. I think one of the things that this last week, if anybody's following the news, where Citi basically executed a wire transfer for $500 million, and it landed. First of all, it wasn't meant to be, but there was a human being involved, and several human beings. So even in that situation, you know, the safeguards were removed, and it happened, and there's no recourse for that. You know, this stuff is happening at a small scale within organizations all the time these days.
We asked our attendees how they would describe their finance department's current level of automation. Proving once again, Derek, that you have your thumb firmly on the pulse of the finance industry, most of our attendees would say their finance department is in that great in-between, partially automated. 39% of you say you're partially automated, but you plan to upgrade your technology. Another 15% of you say you're largely automated, with plans to automate, upgrade or automate further. That's about 45% of the attendees on the line are somewhat short of fully automated, but they plan to add more technology. Does that surprise you, Derek?
No, not at all. I think if you are a company with strong tailwind, if you're looking forward, you want to continuously improve, you want to employ best practices, you want to have financial controls as steady as you can, you know. And the truth is, if you don't, your competition probably does. And so now you're not only competing against your own internal processes, but you know, if one of your competitors is able to be more optimized and be more have more, if their finance teams are able to be more strategic on their side, you know, you're looking at a bigger challenge then.
About 10% of our attendees say that they are not automated at all. They're pushing around paper, manual processes. I imagine for some of those organizations, Derek, it's the idea of automation is simply overwhelming. Where do I begin with all this paper? What advice would you give to those folks?
Start with certainly the pain. You know, it's like what they say in AA meetings, not that I've been in one, but, you know, you have to acknowledge the problem beyond anything, and then figure out where you need to solve for. And you don't want to boil the ocean immediately, but at the same time, you know, there are the tool sets that are out there today are much more cohesive, much more holistic than maybe, you know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, what your AP automation technology would be. So, you know, look and try and get as much end-to-end feature value as you can.
There's no question that automation is dramatically changing the way that companies do business. As a result, millions of workers, young and old, might be displaced from their jobs over time. So with all of this in mind, it's important to explore the current state of where we are with finance automation. Now more than ever, finance leaders like you are going to have to step up to help guide their companies to sustainable success. Finance leaders need to make sure that they have the right technologies in place before things reach a point where operational performance or cash flow or spend management are being hindered. Automation frees finance staff to focus on strategy, not just making sure that those day-to-day tasks are handled. Think about this. Among forward-looking CFOs who automated some or all of their finance processes, more than half of them have eliminated 40% or more of the time that their teams previously needed to spend on manual finance processes. 40%. Many CFOs say their organization has also improved the experience for internal stakeholders as well as for suppliers. So now we have an environment where there's fewer manual tasks and it's more fulfilling work. Using automation to make finance processes more fulfilling and faster and less labor intensive, well, all of this is going to allow teams to spend more time on strategic work. And that means your finance department can have a bigger impact on the enterprise. 62% of CFOs say that they will switch the focus of those employees that currently handle manual tasks that can be automated to higher value work. This is one of the key results of automation, as Derek was alluding to. If a job is eliminated by automation, more than 3/4 of CFOs say they plan to transfer those workers to a different department. So this isn't just about bloodletting. This is about using our resources more wisely. Now, we know that not everyone can do more without additional training, and CFOs get it. 50% of CFOs say they'd retrain workers with new skills, allowing them to circumvent any displacement concerns brought about by automation. Freeing staff to focus more time on strategic activities is critical to driving business growth and value. In fact, your business's future might depend on it. And accounts payable is one area that you ought to be focusing on if you haven't done so already. Accounts payable, my friends, is the most time-consuming function in finance today. Horrendous is the word that Derek used. So when you're talking about automating it, it's an essential element of any finance leader's strategy to modernize their department, to focus on enabling business success. In accounts payable, there's lots of interdependent tasks that go into getting your suppliers paid. You need to onboard suppliers and keep your vendor master file up to date, stay in compliance with tax regulations, keep track of approvals for invoices, deal with currency conversion for global payments, communicate with suppliers about payment status, reconcile payments. The list goes on and on. And not only are all of these manual tasks inefficient, they also add risk to the process, risk of human error, risk of being out of compliance, risk of failing an audit, risk of hefty fines and penalties. Who needs all that today? And guess what? It only gets worse as you get bigger. Size complicates matters for businesses. Complicated global and M&A business structures, they're the norm today. There are plenty of you on the line with international divisions, acquisitions, subsidiaries, brands, entities, you name it. And many of you have disparate finance processes that you've got to manage, just like the company pictured on this slide. Now, some of you might think, well, what works in one region or one subsidiary, well, that's going to work everywhere. But that's not always the case. So what do your finance processes look like then? Well, now in a nutshell, they're a disaster. Businesses with multiple entities can have many different systems to integrate, complex processes to try to navigate and manage, and far-flung finance teams working in each one of these entities. So think about all the time and effort just to pay suppliers for each of these entities. Long before you even get to making a payment, you're struggling to collect and validate and track banking information and tax forms for each supplier in each of these entities. Think about all the resources required to make payments in a local currency. You got to log into multiple bank portals. You got to manage multiple bank relationships. You got to reconcile multiple bank accounts. You got to pay multiple bank fees. Think of all the payments that must be reconciled and the hundreds of spreadsheets you need to do it. And then guess what? You're not only doing it at the entity level, you're going to be doing it all over again at the headquarters level. And many of you don't have complete integration from each of your entities back to your headquarters to roll up values for financial reporting so you can close the books. So what happens then? Well, now generating reports to see the total view across all of your entities and brands and subsidiaries and on, well, you're probably doing that manually, which is time-consuming and really, really risky. AP departments waste lots and lots of time on all of these sorts of manual tasks. Nearly half of CFOs said their finance teams spend 5 to 10 people hours per week just on accounts payable related tasks. These things might be things like invoice processing and dealing with supplier inquiries and supplier payment execution and PO matching and new supplier registration and payment reconciliation. 5 to 10 people hours per week. Add it up, and that comes out to 520 people hours per year. And we wonder why we don't have time for higher value activities. But think about this. 1/4 of finance departments say they're dedicating between 10 to 20 people hours per week just on AP-related tasks. Now, when you add all that up, it comes out to more than 1,000 people hours per year. Imagine what you could do with all of that time if you automated it. Time that could be better spent helping drive strategic initiatives. It's not just a loss of time that we need to be concerned about when it comes to accounts payable. Accounts payable tasks also have some really big economic consequences. Think about this. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, hourly earnings averaged $29.37 last June. So when we start thinking about tasks like invoice management and bill processing and payment reconciliation, well, those types of AP tasks could be costing your business anywhere between $15,000 and $30,000 per FTE per year based on the benchmarks on the last slide. Now we're talking some big bucks here. It's critical, my friends, that you take a big picture approach to AP automation. Often the value of AP automation is simply reduced to the ability to save costs and eliminate manual processes. But you know what? AP automation reaches far beyond electronifying or paper pushing. Many finance departments see big improvements in efficiency and control and processing times and visibility once they've automated. They also are able to seamlessly unite those back office processes and departments so that their teams can better support the costs and risks that come with global scaling. Now we're talking about a strategic function, not just a tactical one. And that brings us to our next poll question, which is about to be displayed on your screen. This time we want to know, which of the following is the most compelling benefit of accounts payable automation in your opinion? Is it better supplier management? Is it streamlined tax and regulatory compliance? Is it easier invoice management and reconciliation? Is it more cost-effective global payments? Take a moment to respond to the poll question now displayed on your screen, and we'll discuss the results in just a moment. So when you talk to finance leaders, Derek, what is it that they tell you is the most compelling reason to automate their accounts payable processes? Derek?
Sorry, I was muted. They usually come to us when there's a problem with scale. Usually it's all of those things. They might not think it's all of those things, but when you solve a single pain point, does that really solve the problem? I'll use an example at home. when somebody says, "Oh, they're going to make dinner," that's nice, but who's going to do all the dishes? Who's going to shop for all the food? Who's going to, manage that whole process? and then deal with the cleanup afterwards. So there's more to it than one thing, and I think a lot of folks glom onto invoice management as that one thing when it comes to AP. But when you think much more holistically around the process, you realize that no, it's an entire cycle that you're engaging with that supplier, and you need to manage that supplier through that process, through the payment process, the reconciliation process. All of that kind of folds into it, and you can't just solve one piece of it.
I made the argument a few moments ago, Derek, that we're living in a more global business environment. And I would argue that the way that most folks manage their supplier payments in this global environment is rather convoluted. We're spending too much time on tasks that could be automated. We're spending too much money with partners we don't necessarily need. How can solutions like Topalti's make it easier to pay global suppliers?
We'll talk a little bit more about that when we kind of get into my segment, but suffice to say, we kind of remove the manual portal interface from an organization and really focus more on helping you control that function rather than actually dealing with it. So when it comes to wires, when it comes to ACH payments or SEPA payments or paper check payments, whatever it is, we kind of remove that process. Yeah, there it is.
We asked our attendees, which of the following is the most compelling benefit of AP automation? Nearly 2/3 of you on the line are compelled by easier invoice management and reconciliation. 17% of you identified more cost-effective global payments. Look at that. 12% of you said better supplier management. 9% of you said streamlined tax and regulatory compliance. What jumps out at you here, Derek?
No secrets, right? This is the pain. This is the greatest pain for finance teams, and invoices. No one really wants to deal with them. They come with a slew of problems. Everything from whether or not it's in the right currency, whether or not it's in PDF or scanned, whether or not there are line items that have to go from one department to another. All of that factors into the invoice management side, and so it's a big pain. But like I said, don't just solve for the big pain. You still got to clean up the kitchen. You still got to close those books, and you still have to make sure that you're able to find the right materials. And I'm crossing a lot of metaphors here, but when it comes to global payments, that is a big factor. And making a global payment error is traumatic, right?
So whether it's streamlining invoice management or making global payments more cost-effectively, improving supplier management, or streamlining your tax and regulatory compliance, these can all have a transformative impact on your finance operations. And in our opinion, it all starts with supplier management. On-demand, self-service supplier portals speed up supplier onboarding. They mitigate payment errors. They improve communications with your suppliers at a time when they're dying to know where things stand. All of this significantly reduces supplier inquiry volumes, and it strengthens your relationships with your suppliers. We know that valued suppliers can be a linchpin to growing your business. AP automation can help you attract and retain the right ones. But automation does more than that. It also makes it easier for AP departments to manage and reconcile their invoices. Paper invoices are converted to an electronic format, either through OCR optical character recognition data capture technology, or by leveraging an e-invoicing solution. And in an automated environment, far more invoices can be posted directly to your ERP or accounting system without anyone ever having to touch them. And in cases of an exception or an invoice that requires review, now digital workflows route invoices based on preset business rules. There's no more guesswork at trying to figure out who I should send an email to, and automated accounts payable solutions reconcile invoices in real time. Automation also assists AP departments with your tax and regulatory compliance. The technology gathers the right tax form and tax information from suppliers before a payment is made. No more chasing down people for this information later on. Automation ensures that the payees provide the correct documents. It validates the forms and information for accuracy and completeness, and it calculates tax withholding when you need that to happen. And finally, automation provides a single platform for multi-entity companies to do business either around town or across the globe. The technology streamlines payments across borders with support for different payment methods and currencies by country. Now, if you find these types of benefits compelling, you aren't alone. But you might be wondering, all right, Mark, how does our finance department build a tech stack that can deliver these types of outcomes? Well, the ultimate tech stack varies depending on a business's maturity, its core strategic priorities, and its complexity. You also have to consider where your business aims to be in a year or two. The types of technologies that Derek and I are talking about today, these are foundational technology. You shouldn't have to replace them for a while. And you certainly don't want to be changing up your processes every year. Plus, there are other vital factors you need to consider, like your global expansion or multi-subsidiary structure or the number of international suppliers you do business with. You also want to be sure to focus your efforts on the most time-consuming finance functions. We argue that should be accounts payable. And in most organizations, accounts payable or accounts receivable or spend management, they typically deserve prioritization when building your tech stack. But that doesn't mean you should stop there. Think about your most significant issues. What are the current problems in your business? What are you looking to rectify? To find the right solutions, you need to consider what to fix currently and what will probably need fixing in the future. And that's where you'll find the best results. You also want to ensure that prospective solutions provide certain capabilities. And the most critical aspect to consider when evaluating a financial tech stack is the accessibility of the solution. If we've learned one lesson over the past 11 months, it's that. Does it have a modern infrastructure? Is it available 24/7? Is it 100% cloud-based? Is there artificial intelligence and machine learning built in so that we don't have to do lots of manual processes while trying to juggle lots of other responsibilities? Does the solution have global capabilities? You're going to have employees all over the world. You're going to need real-time visibility and the ability to scale effectively. It's also essential to find solutions that integrate with whatever you're currently using. For example, suppose you already have part of your finance tech stack established, like your ERP. Maybe you've put in a cloud-based ERP. In that case, you can look within their ecosystem of partners to find suitable integrations that can solve your current problems. The right tech stack should also put cash controls at your finance team's fingertips. Real-time data around crucial business metrics, well, that can help inform and accelerate decision-making. You can leverage this data to quickly model financial plans that reflect whatever's going on in the world. And real-time visibility into supplier expenses can help you stay on top of your spending. When it comes to accounts payable, your tech stack should be 100% cloud-based. It should have digital approval workflows. It should support electronic payments. It should have on-demand onboarding so we get out of the paper chase. It should have a consolidated financial view no matter where your people work. It should provide you with complete data visibility so that the financial close isn't so burdensome. It should have real-time integrations to whatever ERP or accounting system you're using, and it should have multi-subsidiary capabilities for global growth. With that type of a tech stack, now your staff will only need to intervene when absolutely necessary. And this is going to free them from time-consuming tasks such as keying invoice data or shuffling paper or chasing down information. They'll be able to focus on higher value activities that drive corporate growth and value. You know, things like data analysis and supplier management and cleaning up your filthy vendor master database. And the result? Well, the result is going to be a process that can scale with your business. So when the recovery starts, you're going to be ready. The perfect AP tech stack should also incorporate strong financial controls that help prevent fraud, tax, and regulatory and audit risk. A who's who of law enforcement agencies are sounding the alarm about the risks of the way we're doing things in our finance departments these days. Well, with the right AP tech stack, you can help mitigate some of those risks. Now, I know some of you are thinking, hey, we already evaluate our financial processes to help uncover potential vulnerabilities. Well, technology can help take this to the next step. It can help you maintain strong controls on an ongoing basis. So what do you want to look for? Well, you want to look for an AP solution that provides multi-factor authentication, IP restrictions, data protection and encryption, role-based security and audit trails, complete segregation of duties. You can't do that with email. Redundancy, disaster recovery, data backups, all of this, my friends, are critical to ensuring security. But that's not enough. You also want to implement KPMG certified tax compliance. You also want EU-US Privacy Shield protection. And you want to automatically screen new suppliers against OFAC and other watch lists so you can identify any potential bad actors. Here's the thing. Best-in-class finance departments, they know all this. They're already taking steps to deploy the perfect tech stack. They're ditching paper processes. They're eliminating manual tests. They're enhancing decision-making, and they're strengthening supplier relationships. And you know how they're doing it? They're doing it with automation. 64% of businesses are trying to invest and grow or reposition themselves after the pandemic. And the perfect tech stack is going to enable your finance department to do just that. It's going to put you in position so that you can better utilize your resources and your workforce so you can grow the business. And that's going to pay off not only in the short term, but also in the long term. It's going to enable you to modernize your operations for lasting gains no matter how the future unfolds. It's going to give you the ability to maximize efficiency across your finance workflows. It's going to give you the ability to accelerate business visibility. It's going to enable adaptability to changing business needs. And it's going to give you smart finance and cash controls. I know some of you might argue that now is the time to invest in liquidity and cash flow and not in automation. And I get it. There's no question that a strong cash position is critical to your organization's survival. But here's the thing. The right tech stack can deliver productivity improvements while helping you improve your working capital. The ROI is tremendous, and modern AP solutions can be up and running quickly with minimal upfront costs and little disruption to what your current processes are, all while your staff works from home. What does that mean? That means this is a quick win. This is an opportunity to transform your AP function and your finance function fast. The question you might be asking is, okay, so where do I get started? Well, to help you with that, I'm going to hand it off to Derek. Derek?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, CFO Dive, for this opportunity. While we're in this Black Swan event, working from home, our kids are going crazy. We have cabin fever. The silver lining to all of this is that paperless finance, it's no longer a wish. It's become a reality. This situation has accelerated the need for the technology to modernize those financial operations. This gives us actually an opportunity to be more strategic, to build a high velocity finance team, because we want to scale, we want to up level our teams, we want to remove financial risk, and ultimately retire those paper checkbooks and bank fobs. At Supplier, we work with over 1,000 companies. I think it's 1,400 right now. Many are likely brands you recognize. It's really cool to actually listen to podcasts and hear an ad from one of our customers, these up-and-coming companies. We like to call them unicorns or pre-unicorns, and we like to think of ourselves as the unicorn stable when it comes to payables. We actually recently closed a $150 million round of funding that led us to also become a unicorn. But what the industry and our customers recognize is how vital payables automation is to keeping their business running. Like an ERP or spreadsheets, payables automation is essential at the infrastructure level. So CFOs and controllers use us to pay thousands of suppliers worldwide in a matter of clicks, very securely, accurately, in a very auditable way. And here's a cool fact: for our customers, fewer than 5% of transactions are actually made using paper check. So all other payment methods are electronic, whether it's wire or ACH or some other mechanisms like PayPal. All those things are happening with very little interaction from the standpoint of the finance team. As we look ahead, businesses want to keep capturing their market share. They want to expand internationally. Maybe they're acquiring businesses or they're increasing the pace of operations. All of that needs a very scalable system. When finance folks talk about whether or not to invest in technology, it's really about trade-offs. Do I want to? You only have 8 hours in a day or whatever, right? Some of you have more, some of you have fewer. And how do you use that time, though? Do you want to trade it off for engaging in invoice management or transaction management? Or do you want to actually spend that time on much more high-value things? And so when we think of AP automation, because we're trying to do this in a very holistic way, we are trying to instill best practices. We are trying to add the financial controls you need within that cycle, removing all of those kind of fragmented processes, and then building something much more holistic. We're able to actually give back time to the organization. We consistently remove 80% of this workload, and that's with a best practice process in mind. So not only do you get an 80% removal workload, you're actually going to do it the right way as well, so that you have a full-blown cycle for this process, and it automatically reconciles directly to your ERP, and so there's very little information you don't know about. Primarily because we control the point of payment. In other words, rather than working directly with your bank, we become a controlling mechanism for making payments across all accounts. And so because we can see the payment itself, we're able to reconcile faster. We're able to bring in reach for your organization so that you can pay the same process you would use to pay someone in Minnesota would be the same process you would use to pay someone in Madagascar. So Supplier really solves today's payables challenges and readies you for your next level of growth. So thank you for your time. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you so much. And at this time, we're going to enter the Q&A portion of our webinar. So if you haven't already sent in your question, or if you've thought of another question for Derek and I, go ahead and submit those to us now. Jess, let's see what's on people's minds.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Mark and Derek, for a great session. As always, really enjoyed the examples you guys were able to bring to life for us today. As Mark mentioned, we're now going to review some of the questions that have been submitted. Friendly reminder, as Mark just said, please continue to submit your questions via the Q&A section of the interface. Maybe, Mark, we can start with a stat that you presented. You covered that 54% of finance departments have postponed some of their planned investments due to the pandemic. But I'd be curious, and Mark, we could start with you, Derek, would love to have you add in as well. Have either of you observed a greater number of AP departments specifically trying to automate during this time, especially due to some of those challenges of remote work that, Derek just touched on?
Absolutely. So we know that adapting paper-based and semi-automated processes to this new remote work environment is really, really hard. We've heard stories of businesses that are driving invoices around town. We've heard of folks who are sending checks and bringing checks to a signer's doorstep and dropping them on the doorstep and ringing the doorbell, running to their cars so the person can then safely retrieve the checks and sign them for execution. These processes simply are unsustainable. So it's no surprise that stats have showed us that 71% of AP departments plan to deploy more technology. And what they're after is efficiency gains. They know that the way they're doing things today just won't cut it over the long haul. Let's face it, there's no telling when or how AP departments are going to return to the office. So it's imperative that we find ways to do these processes more efficiently so that our teams can spend more time on the things that matter, the things that Derek just described that help drive business growth.
And to add into that,
yep.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to ask if
just
there's
to add
anything
into
anecdotally you've noticed as well.
Yeah, I would say initially when we all went to lockdown last March, there was a blip, right? Everybody was like, what do we do now? And since then, however, we've definitely seen that there's been acceleration for tools like ours. HP software in the cloud atones for many of the manual sins that businesses have been putting off. So shoring up financial controls, establishing best practices, adding visibility into their financial activities. Businesses that are more growth-minded in general, they want to better position themselves for the change in scalability that's coming and take those opportunities. So automation solves a lot of that without adding additional headcount.
Great. Thank you both for sharing there. I want to expand on something, Derek, that you touched on during your segment just before Q&A. You were talking about trade-offs, and I think this relates to something that Mark presented as well. He outlined the top 5 reasons why finance leaders don't automate. Maybe, Derek, we'll start with you here. Do you have any suggestions on how to get buy-in or overcome some of those barriers? I imagine, discussing the trade-offs that you mentioned and how, the whole finance department could be spending more time on value-added activities. But any other thoughts there on how to overcome some of those barriers that Mark outlined?
Yeah, buy-in's always a catch-all excuse for decision-making. If you believe in something, you have to make the case and articulate its value. So that's true for any project you want to see happen, not just technology. But senior management, if you consider that what their needs are, they want to understand what the value is to the business. And then the more tactical staff members, they want to understand, how their lives will be better or impacted as a result. I think if you give everybody a path to where the vision is, then automation can really be a great add-on within the organization. And certainly, up-leveling staff and adding a layer of productivity. These are all factors as any kind of automation would bring. So what you have to do is you're trading off the time that you have. It goes back to, again, you have so many hours in the day, and how do you want to spend it?
When I think about how to get the boss's approval for automation, I always think about the way my kids ask my permission for something that they think I might not be keen on them doing, and they'll find a way to sneakily frame it in what's in it for me. Hey, Dad, we want to go to that movie on a school night. You won't have to worry about us being in the house and making racket while you're on deadline. Put it in terms that the boss will care about, right? So what are CFOs worried about? Well, they're worried about cash flow analysis and liquidity management and risk mitigation. And this is exactly what AP automation does. So make sure that your business case reflects those things that are keeping the approver up at night.
Really great advice. Thank you both for answering there. I'm keeping an eye on the time here, and I think this next one will be our final question, but if you have additional ones, please continue to submit those. I'll share them with Mark and Derek after our webinar so they can follow up if that makes sense. Derek, this one's for you specifically. This attendee writes, how is Tipalti different from other AP cloud vendors?
Favorite question. Let me jump back to this slide. So a few things. One, we promote self-service by the supplier. We want to engage the supplier early, have them become the data entry person, so to speak. And so, they're the ones entering their banking information. They're the ones who tell us how they want to be paid, and they're the ones uploading invoices. There are situations where we can bypass that, but generally the idea is that we can offer some value there from the supplier side so that they can engage. The other critical difference is that we actually are a money transmitter. So we have relationships with some of the large banks, and as well as some of the e-payment providers like PayPal. And we are able to actually pay to 196 countries, using 120 currencies. And what that means for the organization is that when you bring in Tipalti, rather than funding a bank account, you're going to fund a payment account. And the payment account is used for all the reconciliation. It knows how to route things because we have the supplier information about how they want to be paid. And all of that is set up before you even submit an invoice. So that's brought in and running. And so once that invoice comes in, that invoice gets routed through an approval process and internally, and then there's a secondary approval for payments. So rather than your CFO who holds the key fob to bank, sitting there with you with the controller and their typing in wire code instructions, all of that is bypassed. It's basically when do you want to be paid, how do you want to be paid, pay. And from the standpoint of the day-to-day AP tactical person, they don't have to care, how that person was paid, because we'll provide all of that functionality directly.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Derek, for answering that question. We are almost at the top of the hour, so I want to go ahead and share just a few final items with everyone today. Of course, big thank you to Tipalti again for making today's webinar possible. You're welcome to join us at performative.com and continue the conversation with your peers in the community. And as mentioned, if you'd like an introduction to Mark, to Derek, or to Tipalti in general, please do tell us in the survey. I want to leave this slide up for just a few more seconds here so everyone can capture both Mark and Derek's contact information if you'd like to connect and follow up with them. And of course, I want to thank all of our attendees for joining us this afternoon for our webinar. We hope that you all enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again for joining us.